The escape that shook Texas. It was December 13, 2000, just 12 days before Christmas, when the guards of the John B. Connally Unit in South Texas went about their usual afternoon routine. The prison, surrounded by razor wire and endless flat land, housed some of the most dangerous men in the state. Nobody imagined that a group of inmates inside those walls was quietly constructing one of the most daring prison breaks in modern American history. Among them was George Rivas, a former Army veteran and the undisputed leader. Intelligent, calm, and manipulative, Rivas had spent weeks studying guard schedules, security blind spots, and maintenance patterns. Alongside him were 6 others: Joseph Garcia, Donald Newberry, Randy Halpern, Larry Harper, Michael Rodriguez, and Patrick Murphy, all serving long sentences for violent crimes. Together, they called themselves the Texas Seven. Their plan was meticulous. They would strike in daylight, blending confidence with precision. Their first target, the prison maintenance area. Under guise of fixing equipment, Rivas and 2 others overpowered civilian employees, tied them up, and took their uniforms. The operation unfolded like a military maneuver. One group impersonated guards on the radio, while another faked official calls to lure staff into isolated areas. Within minutes, they had captured and restrained several real guards, duct taped, gagged, and locked in a utility room. They moved with frightening organization. The inmates seized firearms, ammunition, and even a white prison pickup truck, the key to their getaway. As they prepared to leave, one of them turned to Rivas and said, "This is it. No turning back." Rivas nodded once, eyes cold and steady. At exactly 2:30 p.m., wearing stolen guard uniforms and carrying weapons, the 7 men drove straight out of the Connally Unit gate. The guards at the exit, believing they were maintenance workers, waved them through. By the time the alarm was raised, the Texas Seven were long gone. Their escape sent shockwaves through Texas law enforcement. Roadblocks went up across the state. Helicopters hovered. News stations broke the story within hours. 7 armed inmates escaped from maximum security prison. But these weren't just fugitives. They were tacticians. The men split roles and responsibilities, moving across the state in stolen vehicles and using walkie-talkies to coordinate. They broke into stores after hours for supplies and cash, leaving behind almost no evidence. As the manhunt grew, so did the tension. Officers knew they weren't chasing desperate men. They were chasing soldiers of chaos. Every officer in Texas was warned, "Do not approach. They are heavily armed and highly dangerous." For weeks, the group stayed ahead of authorities. They moved from San Antonio to Dallas, robbing stores, hiding in abandoned buildings, and planning their next move. But with each day on the run, they grew bolder and more reckless. On Christmas Eve, they robbed a radio shack in Pearland, Texas. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. They weren't just escaping. They were taunting the system. By Christmas Day, they had already crossed hundreds of miles. For the guards back at Connally, disbelief turned to humiliation. How could 7 convicted felons have outsmarted an entire maximum security system? The answer lay not in luck, but in leadership. Rivas had been planning this for months. He knew the schedules, the blind spots, the weaknesses, and most chillingly, he knew how to turn chaos into control. But as the group moved north toward Dallas, their confidence would turn into arrogance, and their perfect plan would soon lead them to a tragic confrontation that would change everything. For 2 weeks, the Texas Seven evaded every trap set for them. They were ghosts, armed, organized, and untraceable. But freedom, for men who had lived most of their lives behind bars, came with a dangerous addiction, power. For men who had lived most of their lives behind bars, came with a dangerous addiction, power. By late December 2000, their crimes had escalated. They had robbed several stores for supplies, stolen new cars to replace old ones, and used fake identities to blend in with civilians. They had shaved their beards, cut their hair, and worn secondhand clothes bought from thrift stores. At night, they stayed in an old trailer park outside Dallas. Inside, George Rivas, the mastermind, gathered them around a small table littered with maps, cigarettes, and beer cans. "We need money," he said. "Real money. Enough to get us out of the country." That's when they planned a robbery that would seal their fate. a robbery of a sporting goods store in Irving, Texas. Their goal: steal firearms, ammunition, and cash. But what they didn't know was that their luck was running out, and that law enforcement, driven by national outrage, was closing in fast. It was the afternoon of December 24th, 2000, Christmas Eve. The 7 men walked into the Oshman Supersport store dressed in stolen clothes, pretending to be customers. Employees smiled politely as the group split up, each heading to different aisles. But within seconds, the air changed. Rivas pulled out a handgun, cocked it, and shouted, "Everyone on the floor! This is a robbery." The employees froze. Some screamed. The group moved quickly, clearing the display cases, shoving rifles and handguns into duffel bags. They locked terrified workers in a storage room and cut the phone lines. It was a perfect operation, until fate intervened. Outside, a concerned citizen had noticed something strange. A truck parked awkwardly near the exit, engine running. They quietly dialed 911. Moments later, Officer Aubrey Hawkins, a 29-year-old police officer and father one, responded to the call. It was supposed to be a simple check on a suspicious vehicle. Instead, it became the moment that turned a clever escape into a tragedy. As Hawkins pulled into the parking lot, the doors to the store burst open. The fugitives, startled, saw the flashing lights. Gunfire erupted. Dozens of bullets tore through the cold Christmas night. Within seconds, the gunfight ended, and Officer Hawkins lay motionless beside his patrol car. The 7 men jumped into their stolen truck and sped away, vanishing into the city streets under the glow of holiday lights. Behind them, sirens wailed. When news broke that a police officer had been killed on Christmas Eve, everything changed. What had been a thrilling escape story now became a national crisis. The Texas 7 were no longer fugitives. They were America's most wanted. Within hours, the FBI, Texas Rangers, and U.S. Marshals joined the search. Posters with their faces flooded the country. Their mugshots appeared on the evening news, talk shows, and even America's Most Wanted. The public was terrified and fascinated. How could 7 inmates escape, kill a cop, and still remain free? The manhunt grew into a national obsession. The group, now fugitives on every TV screen, fled north, switching stolen vehicles and sleeping in motels under fake names. But the tension between them was rising. Trust was breaking apart. Some wanted to flee to Mexico. Others, like Rivas, still believed they could outsmart everyone. In the quiet moments between hiding and running, they began to realize the truth. They were no longer in control. The walls of freedom were closing in, and by January, those walls would collapse completely. In a small Colorado town where their desperate final stand would come to a violent end. By January 2001, the Texas 7 were running out of road, food, and luck. For 42 days, they had lived as ghosts, changing cars, aliases, and hiding spots across the country. But their faces were everywhere now. Their names flashed across TV screens, post offices, and gas stations. They were no longer invisible. Country, but their faces were everywhere now. Their names flashed across TV screens, post offices, and gas stations. They were no longer invisible. The turning point came when their mugshots aired on America's Most Wanted. It was the break law enforcement had been waiting for. Within hours, hundreds of tips poured in. One, in particular, came from Woodland Park, Colorado, a small mountain town where a group of men had been living under strange circumstances at a local RV park. The tipster had noticed something odd. The men always stayed inside, rarely talked to anyone, and seemed overly cautious. They paid cash, avoided eye contact, and drove an old truck with mismatched plates. Police moved quickly. Within hours, the quiet mountain park became the center of one of the largest tactical operations in U.S. manhunt history. The fugitives inside the RV knew something was wrong. George Rivas, the leader, paced the floor, a gun at his side. "We've got to move," he said. But it was too late. The sound of distant sirens echoed through the pines. Outside, snipers took position. Floodlights cut through the cold Colorado night. Officers shouted to megaphones. "This is law enforcement. Come out with your hands up." Inside, chaos erupted. Rivas loaded his weapon. Larry Harper, one of the older escapees, stared out the window and whispered, "I'm not going back." Moments later, a single shot rang out. Harper had taken his own life. The rest froze. That one gunshot shattered whatever illusion of control they still had. They were cornered, tired, cold, and outnumbered. Hours later, George Rivas stepped out, weapon in hand, and surrendered quietly. He looked calm, even proud, as if the months of running had been worth the chaos they caused. Behind him, one by one, Joseph Garcia, Randy Halper, and Michael Rodriguez, and Patrick Murphy followed. Each was cuffed and led into police vehicles. Their escape finally over. Only one, Donald Newberry, tried to resist. He was captured after a brief standoff on a nearby road, his hands trembling as he laid down his gun. The last of the Texas Seven were finally behind bars again. When officers searched their RV, they found handguns, rifles, disguises, and maps. They also found a Bible, open to a passage underlined in red. "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." But freedom for these men had come at a deadly cost. Their 42-day rampage left one police officer dead and a nation questioning its prison system. The escape exposed deep flaws in Texas correctional security, from understaffing to overconfidence, and led to sweeping reforms in the years that followed. In the end, justice came slowly but decisively. All surviving members of the Texas Seven were convicted of capital murder for the killing of Officer Aubrey Hawkins. Over the following decade, Rivas, Rodriguez, Garcia, and Newberry were executed by lethal injection. The remaining three continue to serve life sentences in maximum security facilities, isolated and watched around the clock. For the family of Officer Hawkins, the executions brought closure, but not peace. His widow once said, "They didn't just kill a man that night, they killed Christmas for our family forever." As for the town of Dannemora, Texas, and the entire nation, the story of the Texas Seven remains a chilling reminder that intelligence and evil can coexist, and that the most dangerous escapes aren't always about breaking walls, but breaking trust. When asked years later if he regretted his actions, one surviving member replied from his cell, "We escaped the prison, but not ourselves." Their names are now carved into the dark legacy of American true crime. 7 men who turned a desperate dream of freedom into a trail of tragedy. And for every officer, guard, and civilian who remembers that winter of 2000, the words Texas 7 still echo like a warning. Never underestimate the ones who have nothing left to lose.